2:47 p.m. The Persian Gulf. The sun is a white-hot furnace hammering down on a glassy, windless sea. Visibility is unlimited. Every horizon bleeds into the next. There is nowhere to hide, or so it seemed, deep inside the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps naval headquarters in Bandar Abbas. A general stood before a tactical display that showed, in real time, the precise location of USS Abraham Lincoln, a Nimitz-class supercarrier, 100,000 tons of American steel, and according to every Iranian satellite pass, every drone overflight, every human intelligence asset embedded in Bahrain, she was sailing with minimal escort. 2 destroyers, 1 cruiser, a supply ship. That was all. The general smiled. For 18 months, Iran had constructed what its commanders called Operation Kaveh, named for the legendary blacksmith hero of Persian mythology, who rose against a tyrant. 84 anti-ship cruise missiles, pre-positioned across 3 separate launch sites. Fast attack boats hidden in the narrow inlets of the Strait of Hormuz. Truck-mounted launchers buried under camouflage netting on the islands of Abu Musa and Greater Tunb. And a battery of Houthi-supplied Khalij-Fars ballistic missiles angled and ready on the mainland coast. 42 speedboats loaded with suicide drones. A swarm of over 200 Iranian kamikaze UAVs pre-programmed with the carrier's last known coordinates. All of it timed to strike simultaneously. All of it designed to overwhelm, saturate, and sink. They believed USS Abraham Lincoln would be at the bottom of the Gulf within 11 minutes. They were catastrophically wrong. Iran made not 1, not 2, but 5 catastrophic mistakes. First mistake, USS Abraham Lincoln was not alone. The Iranians had tracked a surface group of 4 ships, what their satellites had not detected, because the U.S. Navy had spent 3 weeks ensuring they would not, were the 2 Virginia-class submarines running silent and deep in the western Gulf, USS Oklahoma City and USS Minnesota, both loaded, both listening, both waiting. Second mistake, the launch sites were already targeted. Every missile battery on Abu Musa, every fast attack boat penned in the Bandar Abbas Inlet, every truck-mounted launcher on Greater Tunb Island, U.S. Space Command assets, MQ-4 Sea Triton drones flying at 60,000 feet, and P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft had spent 11 days cataloging every Iranian asset in the operational area. By the time the first Iranian finger moved toward a launch button, there were already 112 Tomahawk cruise missiles assigned to those exact coordinates, loaded into the vertical launch systems of 4 U.S. warships and 2 submarines, ready to fly. Third mistake, the electronic environment. The moment Iran activated its fire control radars to begin targeting lock on the carrier, the USS Lake Champlain, a Ticonderoga-class cruiser, lit up its AN/SPY-1 radar, and simultaneously, EA-18G Growler electronic warfare jets launched from Lincoln's deck began jamming every Iranian targeting frequency in the operational area. Iranian radar operators watched their screens dissolve into white noise. Missile seekers lost their lock. Guidance systems began feeding corrupted data back to launch crews on the ground. Fourth mistake, the air was already owned. 6 F-35C, Lightning IIs and 4 F/A-18 Super Hornets were already airborne on combat. Air Patrol at the time of launch, positioned in a layered defensive arc 30 miles ahead of the battle group. They had been there for 6 hours. Iran assumed the carrier's flight deck was empty, resting between sorties. It was not. The Lincoln's air wing had been quietly rotating aircraft in and out of the defensive umbrella on a schedule specifically designed to be invisible to Iranian pattern analysis. Fifth mistake, they thought no one was watching. They were wrong. At the exact moment the Iranian commander gave the order to fire, a signals intelligence satellite overhead registered the encrypted burst transmission. Within 40 seconds, U.S. Fleet Forces Command in Norfolk, the 5th Fleet Commander in Bahrain, and the Strike Group Commander aboard Lincoln all received the same alert. Launch imminent. What happened in the next 22 minutes defined the future of naval warfare. At 2:49 p.m., the first wave of Iranian cruise missiles left their launchers. 61 Nor anti-ship missiles screaming off the coast and the islands at low altitude, sea skimming at just 15 feet above the water, closing at 540 miles per hour. Simultaneously, 17 Khalij-Fars ballistic missiles arced upward from the mainland, climbing into the stratosphere on terminal descent trajectories aimed at the carrier's flight deck. And then, the drone swarm launched. 214 kamikaze UAVs rising off fast attack boats that fanned out across the water in a wide arc, all converging on one point. It looked on paper like total saturation. It was not. The TAO aboard Lincoln, the tactical action officer, had already given the order. The carrier battle group was already in DEFCON Alpha posture. Every weapon system was hot. Every operator was at his console. Every fire control radar was already tracking the horizon. The Combat Information Center aboard the Lincoln looked like the inside of a living machine. Dozens of flat screens, radar returns crawling across tactical displays, weapons officers calling contacts, and ranges and practiced rapid sequences. This was not a crew reacting in surprise. This was a crew executing. There is a difference, and in naval warfare, that difference is everything. USS Lake Champlain opened fire first. Her Mark 41 vertical launch system began spitting Standard missile. 6 interceptors at a rate that sounded like a drum roll of thunder. SM-6 has a range of over 130 miles and can engage cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and aircraft simultaneously. The cruiser's fire control radar was tracking every single inbound contact at once. In the first 40 seconds, 11 SM-6 interceptors were airborne. USS Mason and USS Nitsa, the 2 Arleigh Burke destroyers, joined the wall of fire. Their combined VLS cells added another 22 SM-2 and SM-6 rounds to the sky. The airspace above the Persian Gulf turned white with exhaust trails. At an altitude of 60,000 feet, the ballistic missiles were already being tracked by the Aegis Ballistic Missile Defense Network, USS Lake Champlain's SM-3 Block II. A interceptors, the most advanced ballistic missile killers on the planet, began launching on the Khalij-Fars tracks. The first SM-3 interceptor reached its target 17 seconds after leaving the ship. The warhead detonated in a blinding flash of kinetic energy high above the Gulf. Debris rained down harmlessly into the sea 30 miles from the carrier. The second and third interceptors killed 2 more. The fourth and fifth killed 3 more. By the time the ballistic salvo reached its midpoint, the Aegis system had engaged all 17 ballistic missiles. 14 were killed in mid-course. 3 slipped through to terminal phase and were immediately engaged by RAM missiles and CIWS phalanx guns on the ships closest to the projected impact points. All 3 were destroyed before impact. 0 ballistic missile hits. 0. At sea level, the cruise missile wall was hitting the layered defense. The F-35s engaged first. At long range, their AN/APG-81 AESA radars painted the sea-skimming Nor missiles, while AIM-120D Abrams reached out and killed them. At distances the Iranian planners had never anticipated. In the first engagement envelope, 11 cruise missiles were downed by air-to-air missiles before they crossed the 60-mile mark. The Super Hornets hit the next wave at 40 miles. Another 14 cruise missiles destroyed. The SM-2s and SM-6s from the surface ships killed another 22 inside 30 miles. 8 missiles remained. They were fast, low, and inside the defensive envelope now. This was the moment Iran had designed to be unsurvivable. 8 Nor cruise missiles at sea-skimming altitude, inside 10 miles, converging on USS Abraham Lincoln from multiple vectors simultaneously. The Lincoln's own CIWS systems, 3 phalanx. Block 1B mounts, each capable of firing 4,500 rounds per minute, opened up. The sound was like 1,000 chainsaws igniting at once. The sky ahead of the carrier became a wall of 20-millimeter tungsten. 5 missiles detonated or were destroyed in the last mile. 2 more were taken by Ram short-range missiles fired from the Lincoln herself. The final missile, the last of Iran's 84 anti-ship cruise missiles, struck the carrier's port side hull, plating at the waterline. The warhead detonated. The explosion opened a gash in the outer hull. Damage control teams were responding within 45 seconds. The flooding was contained within 3 minutes. No American sailor died. No aircraft was lost. The carrier did not slow. The flight deck remained fully operational. And now, it was America's turn. At 3:02 p.m., 13 minutes after Iran's first missile had left its launcher, the strike group commander gave the order that the submarine commanders had been waiting for. USS Oklahoma City fired first. 12 Tomahawk land attack missiles burst from her torpedo tubes in rapid succession, climbed to cruise altitude, and turned toward the Iranian coast. Each Tomahawk was already pre-programmed with a specific GPS coordinate, a specific aim point, a specific time-on-target window. The result of days of mission planning by strike planners aboard Lincoln and at 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain. These were not improvised shots. They were the execution of a plan that had been ready and waiting for exactly this moment. USS Minnesota followed with 14 more. From the surface ships, the vertical launch systems that had been emptied in defense were supplemented by a dedicated strike salvo. USS Mason contributed 8 Tomahawks. USS Nitsa, another 12. USS Lake Champlain, 22. 68 Tomahawks in the first volley, all of them in the air within 4 minutes of the attack order. The FA-18 Super Hornets, already airborne, were assigned suppression of enemy air defense missions. 6 jets carrying AGM-88 HARM anti-radiation missiles descended toward the Iranian coast at low altitude, targeting every active radar site between Bandar Abbas and Abu Musa. Iranian air defense operators had a choice: keep their radars active and die immediately, or shut them down and go blind. Most chose to go blind. The ones who didn't had their radar dishes reduced to scrap metal within 60 seconds of the Super Hornet's weapons release. At 3:07 p.m., 12 F-35C Lightning IIs launched from Lincoln's deck, each carrying a full internal weapons load, 2,000-pound JDAM precision-guided bombs and JSM cruise missiles. They flew in absolute radar silence, invisible to every remaining Iranian sensor in the operational area. Their targets were the command and control nodes, the Revolutionary Guard Naval Headquarters in Bandar Abbas, the communications relay station on Greater Tunb Island, the hardened bunker complex on Qasem Island that served as Iran's regional maritime operations center, and then the B-1B Lancers arrived. 2 of them. They had been orbiting at high altitude over the Central Gulf for 6 hours, pre-positioned by U.S. Central Command 48 hours before the Iranian attack. Because U.S. intelligence had already assessed that Operation Cave was in its final preparation phase. Each B-1B carried 24 joint air-to-surface standoff missiles, 48 JASSM cruise missiles, each with a 2,000-pound penetrating warhead, began raining down on the Iranian military infrastructure. The fast attack boat pens in Bandar Abbas, the ones that had launched the drone swarms, were hit by 8 missiles simultaneously. The entire facility, 16 boats, 3 maintenance hangars, a fuel depot, ceased to exist in 14 seconds. By 3:19 p.m., the full toll was becoming clear. The Iranian missile battery on Abu Musa Island, destroyed. 4 Tomahawks impacted within a 40-meter radius of the launcher trucks. Nothing survived. The launcher complex on Greater Tunb, destroyed. Direct hits on all 3 firing positions. The ammunition storage bunker cooked off in a secondary explosion that was visible from the Lincoln's flight deck 30 miles away. The Bandar Abbas fast attack boat compound, destroyed. 8 vessels sunk at their moorings. 6 more destroyed on the water during the drone swarm launch. 2 managed to flee into the open Gulf, where they were tracked, targeted, and sunk by a P-8 Poseidon with Mark 54 torpedoes 40 minutes later. The Khalij Fars missile battery on the mainland coast near Manab. Destroyed. The GPS coordinates had been preloaded into 3 Tomahawks the moment U.S. Signals Intelligence detected the battery's fire control radar activation. All 3 impacted the launcher vehicles within 90 seconds of the original battery firing. The IRGC Naval headquarters in Bandar Abbas, severely damaged. Multiple JASSM strikes collapsed 2 of the 3 main command buildings. The communications tower was destroyed. The backup command facility 3 kilometers away, which U.S. intelligence had known about for 14 months, was hit by F-35C, delivered JDAMs 7 minutes later. The drone control facility on Keshem Island, destroyed. 2 direct hits from F-35C carried JSM missiles. The full accounting completed by 5:30 p.m. on the same day as the attack. 193 Iranian military personnel killed, 41 wounded, 22 fast attack boats destroyed, 11 missile launchers obliterated, 4 command facilities reduced to rubble, 2 radar stations eliminated, 1 hardened bunker complex collapsed, 14 military vessels sunk, 2 Iranian naval helicopters destroyed on the ground, total Iranian operational capacity in the Strait of Hormuz region reduced by an estimated 73% in a single afternoon. U.S. casualties, 0 killed, 4 sailors treated for minor injuries from the single missile impact. All 4 returned to duty within the hour. USS Abraham Lincoln. Superficial hull damage. Fully operational within 2 hours of the attack. 0 aircraft lost. 0 ships damaged beyond the single impact on Lincoln's outer hull. In the hours following the strike, U.S. Central Command released a brief, clinical statement. No triumphalism, no speeches, just facts. The strike group had defended itself. The counterstrike had been executed as planned. All assets were recovered. All systems were operational. The waterway remained open to international shipping. The USS Abraham Lincoln's public affairs officer noted, for the record, that flight operations had resumed within 40 minutes of the final intercept. The carrier had not broken stride. In Tehran, the general who had smiled at his tactical display 3 hours earlier was no longer smiling. He was watching, via a grainy satellite feed, the burning wreckage of everything he had built over 18 months. The general had told his commanders that the Americans would not fight, that the carrier was isolated, that the political will in Washington had crumbled, that this was Iran's moment. He had been wrong about all of it. What happened in the next 22 minutes after Iran pulled the trigger was not a battle. It was a lesson written in fire and precision-guided steel, delivered at the speed of sound across the entire Persian Gulf operational theater, executed with a flawlessness that no military force on Earth, other than one, could have achieved. The USS Abraham Lincoln turned into the wind at 5:45 p.m. Her flight deck crew, in their color-coded jerseys, yellow for aircraft directors, red for ordnance, purple for fuel, moved with the same practiced efficiency they had shown every single day of the deployment. FA-18s trapped on the wire. F-35Cs rolled into the hangar bay. The machinery of American naval power reset itself, as it always did, with quiet professionalism and total effectiveness. Somewhere beneath the waves, USS Oklahoma City and USS Minnesota reloaded their tubes and resumed their silent patrol. Somewhere above the clouds, a B-1B Lancer turned west toward its base. Its weapons bays empty, its mission complete. Somewhere over the Gulf, a P-8 Poseidon dropped its last sonobuoy and banked toward home. And the Persian Gulf, the waterway that Iran had tried to turn into an American graveyard, remained open, free, international waters, as it always had been. This is what happens when you attack the United States Navy. You do not find a target. You find a trap. You do not find a weakened adversary. You find the most lethal, most coordinated, most technologically overwhelming military force ever assembled by any nation in the history of warfare. You find submarines you never knew were there. You find bombers that were already airborne before you gave your first order. You find interceptors that kill your missiles before your missiles can see the ship. You find a machine so practiced, so precise, so utterly relentless, that by the time you realize your catastrophic mistake, it is already over. Iran pulled the trigger on 84 missiles, 200 drones, and 18 months of planning. America answered with 68 Tomahawks, 12 F-35s, 2 B-1B Lancers, 48 JASSMs, and the cold, surgical destruction of every military asset Iran had positioned to threaten free navigation in the Gulf. The lesson was not just military, it was historical. It was permanent. The Persian Gulf belongs to no tyrant. It never has. And on this day, at 2:47 p.m., under a merciless sun, on a glassy and windless sea, the United States Navy proved it one more time.